One of my favorite shows as of recently has been Rick and Morty. It's this really silly show with this sort of underlying deeper themes of science fiction and family drama. It's a show that initially relied on shock humor, but as the seasons have gone on, it's begun to rely more on character-driven comedy. It's a really easy show to watch. That's why when I saw this, I laughed really hard. I mean, it's a smart show, but I can see why people don't like it.
I'm Pickle Rick!
And you don't need to be super intelligent to watch it. In fact, when I first started watching Rick and Morty, I hated it because I stayed home on a Saturday night to watch Samurai Jack. Yeah, that was a really horrible April Fool's Day joke. But quickly afterwards, I dove straight into it. Only a few months ago, the fanbase was this niche thing that was kind of just for fun. But it's evolved and mutated into this incredibly toxic community that exceeds the absurdity of even the Undertale, Sonic, Super Wholock, and Steven Universe fandom.
We blew up, idiot! Are you really that stupid? Obviously the guy I yelled at overloaded the machine. It takes more than that to kill Rick and Morty,
Parts of the fanbase threatened writers, McDonald's employees, and became really exclusive and elitist. But how did it go from this niche thing into this incredibly toxic, hateful, and obnoxious mess? I mean, I know that this is only representative of a small percentage of the Rick and Morty fanbase, but it's ruining the reputation of the whole show. Rick and Morty is in the mainstream. Normies like it. A few years back, I was a huge Marble Hornets fan, but when Slender came out, that little niche community I was in suddenly was introduced to everyone. It was no longer this special thing for me and my friends to watch and for me to introduce to people. Everyone already knew about it. I was 16, and at the time, I felt like I needed to clarify that I liked Marble Hornets and Slender Man before the game came out. Essentially, I liked it before it was cool. And you guys call me hipster trash. But after a while, I was totally okay with it. I mean, it's not like Marble Hornets was directly tied into what I thought about myself as a person. It's okay that other people know what it is, but unfortunately not everyone has the same reaction as that. People want to make a distinction between real fans and those who are just jumping on the bandwagon. If you like certain things about the show more than others, you could be wrong. And if you're not totally obsessed with it, you might not actually be a true fan of the series. You might be a fake fan. And on that subject, I totally think obsession is another cause. It's completely okay to like a show a lot. It's okay to get tattoos, cosplay, and it's okay to make silly lip sync videos while in cosplay. Seriously, these people aren't hurting anyone. But you don't suddenly become a part of the show just because you like it. You're not as smart as Rick because you watch the show, and it's okay for people not to like the show at the same level you do. What I love about the few people who actually think watching Rick and Morty is suddenly making them feel intelligent is that the same thing happened with Sherlock a few years ago. People took it as a true education in deduction and reasoning skills. It's not. It's a fictional story. Last weekend, McDonald's was having their Szechuan sauce promotion, which was brought upon because Rick and Morty made a one-off joke about Szechuan sauce. Yeah, almost nobody got any sauce, and some people took it a little too seriously.
Wait, you guys have no Szechuan sauce? No. I want Szechuan sauce! Where's my Szechuan sauce? I'm Pickle Rick! What below dum-dum? I'm Pickle Rick!
I mean, I totally get that the guy was joking and totally trolling, but making a scene like this has the same effect to those in the restaurant regardless if you're joking or not. You're making these McDonald's employees' life a living hell so you can feel like you're part of an in-joke that actually only has the smallest relation to the show itself. I mean, this wasn't a collaboration between McDonald's and Adult Swim. McDonald's just chose to do this on their own. It's the destruction of the niche and obsession that causes toxicity within fan bases. But what does a toxic fan base look like? Well, there's a lot of elitism and a sense of false ownership over the property in question. Last weekend, I was at a convention and I ran into this guy who just started talking about how much better his Samsung was than my iPhone. He needed to validate himself by saying that the fandom that he was in, the Samsung fandom, was far superior than that of the Apple fandom. I just didn't care. But for some reason, he felt the need to define his superiority over me due to his tastes about phones. When critiquing media, just critiquing media, everything is subjective. People always ask me what's an objective way to critique something, and the answer is there isn't one. There is no objective way to critique a video game, a movie, or a TV show. The closest thing you can get to objectivity is objectively comparing something to a subjective set of standards. But that's it. If someone liked the finale of Rick and Morty, that's okay. Not every finale needs to be a dramatic cliffhanger ending with 9 Inch Nails music played over it. Don't attack people for having that opinion, and don't attack people for not liking it. Some of the intense reactions that I get personally from my opinion is incredible. I get told all the time that my opinion is biased, and to that I say, no shit. I'm talking about video games. My reviews are biased to my own tastes. If I talk about a children's cartoon, my opinion is biased to the fact that I'm an adult. These aren't mathematical truths about the world that I'm discussing. I'm not engaging in political discourse while being uninformed about statistics or public thought. I really can't have a wrong opinion when talking about Digimon, no matter how you look at it. But people try. I talk about Pokemon and I get scolded because the series has apparently been going downhill since Gen 1. I talk about liking Gen 1 and I'm told Gen 1 was overrated. I just think it's absurd that someone has such an intense reaction to something that at the end of the day doesn't matter. It's okay to disagree on cartoons and video games and movies. I don't need to be told to kill myself when I disagree with your opinion. If you don't know what gatekeeping is, just go visit r/gatekeeping, but let me summarize it. I'm a fan of Game of Thrones. The show is great. But somebody responds, any real fan knows that the books are way better. It's this idea that you're not truly a fan or capable of doing something unless you meet the standards of some douchebag. This can come out in many forms. It can be as simple as someone calling you a casual fan in a nasty way. As if the fact that you just casually enjoying Rick and Morty on a Sunday night and laughing at the dumb humor is a bad thing. It's this sort of tribal mentality, attempting to protect a community that doesn't really exist all that much. I think the internet has made it really easy for fans of something to connect with each other, and when people are talking back and forth and sharing opinions, theories, and creative ideas about a show, there's this sense of community. But it's not like it's this organized, exclusive club. But a lot of people see it that way. People who don't meet the standards of this club or fan base shouldn't be in it. It's just a completely backwards way of looking at the situation. False ownership. Have you ever heard the phrase, they owe it to the fans? Yeah, no. You're not owed anything because you enjoy a TV show. This season of Rick and Morty introduced 2 female writers who had their personal information exposed on the internet and then received death threats. Why? Because some people thought that their favorite cartoon had lost its edge. First of all, were we watching the same show? I distinctly remember an episode where someone was trapped in an imaginary world and survived by raping the imaginary creatures and eating their babies. If you think that the show has lost its edge though, that's an okay opinion to have. But here's a thought, maybe shock humor becomes less shocking when you've been conditioned to expect it. To be honest, I really only think the first season of the show relied on shock value. The last 2 seasons of the show still had that edgy humor, but mostly relied on the character development to do character-driven comedy. But in the end, it doesn't matter. I wouldn't care if there was ample, substantial, and verifiable evidence to suggest that these 2 writers were directly responsible for toning down the show's edge factor. You don't dox someone and threaten them when you think your favorite cartoon show has started to have less absurd and edgy humor. You don't have a direct say for the direction the creators and creative team chooses to take that show because you don't own it. It's not yours. Unfortunately, this type of toxicity within fan bases can spoil outside perceptions of the show and make people not want to be a part of it because they don't want to be associated with this.
I'm Kendall Rick! 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 I'm Pickle Rick! Rick! Rick!
It sucks for everyone else who wants to enjoy the show, but try to change the culture. Don't be an asshole. Anyways, I'm gonna get back to games and TV shows and other things next week, so yeah, if this is your first video of mine, please consider subscribing, follow me on social media. I didn't really mean to be a downer this week, it's just this is something that was bothering me. Yeah. So anyways, social media links in the description. Thank you for watching, I'll see you next week.